Chicago's architecture community honored its own recently at the 60th Annual Design Night. We'll look at the projects and the people who were honored. I'm Lee Bay, and welcome again to Architecture 360. Design Night is kind of the Oscars for Chicago architecture. Hosted by AIA Chicago, which is the Chicago chapter of the American Institute of Architects, Design Night is a real gala held in the Navy Pier Ballroom. But it's also a good place to assess the state of architecture in Chicago, both the practice and, most importantly, what's getting built. Zurich Esposito is Executive Vice President of AIA Chicago. He'll talk about the night, who won what, and what it all means. Zurich, thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Lee. It's always great to see you.
Now, Design Night, set the stage a bit. The mayor is there. What's going on?
We got the mayor this year. We may have had Daley in the past, but this was a first for Rahm, so It was great to introduce him to the event. I think he was pretty impressed that we had over 1,000 members of the architecture, design, construction, engineering community with us. Right before Design Night, the first part of Design Night is a cocktail party, and the mayor did a great job, navigating the crowd. That's a tough job.
It is. Now let's talk about the big winners of the night. One was the Chicago Athletic Association Hotel at 12 South Michigan, right there at Michigan and Madison. Now, this was for the listeners, this was the former Chicago Athletic Club, a Gothic Revival beauty that closed in 2007, but it sprang to life again this year when it reopened as a hotel.
Amazing project. I think so many of us, members of the public, members of the design community, certainly members of the development community, it was a big question mark as to what the future of this splendid building could be. And that question was beautifully answered by this hotel project. It's pretty amazing, and I think it's certainly captured all our interests. You can barely get in the place. Certainly, it's difficult to get to the roof bar. I've tried several times. I was lucky to have a tour just before they opened, but I haven't made it up to the roof since. It's spectacular, and it's a beguiling project. You don't tire of it when you go through it because you're always discovering some new aspect of it. The architecture firm who completed the renovation is Hartshorn Plunkard, a Chicago-based firm, and they worked with a really neat New York-based consulting firm on the interiors, Werman and Williams. Just a terrific project.
And, this is a private club, so many people couldn't get in unless you were, in its first life, unless you were invited or something like this. But now these spaces, and you can walk right on in if you're not distracted by the burger place, as I often am.
The burger place. I think that's a great, fun, inviting aspect to it. It's not, we're not allowed in this private place anymore. It is incredibly democratic and welcoming.
And there's marble. There's everything you would expect a building like this to sort of be, and it's retained all there.
Yeah, it's got some really amazingly beautiful, elegant details that now they're there for all of us to enjoy.
Carol Ross Barney, architect Carol Ross Barney, CTA Cermak Station, a building.
I love this project.
I do too. This is pretty good. Another winner, fine piece of architecture. You can see it for $2. Tell us what the jury saw and said about this.
Well, some of them, it's hard not to see a tube over an L train and not compare it to the Rem Koolhaas design tube over IIT's Student Center. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, Carol's came out ahead of that one in the comparison, according to our jury team, who did muse on that idea. It's a very different project. It's very elegant. It's very clean. And Carol has done some beautifully elegant and clean projects for CTA stations, really restoring, I think, the public's dignity for all of us who ride public transportation. And this project is certainly no exception. Carol's project for the Morgan Street station also has won a Design Excellence Award recently, not this year, one previously. But both of these stations are gorgeous contemporary projects for public transportation, and Chicago deserves them. They're not super expensive, but they're a very high-quality design.
And both are accessible with one trip on the Green Line, the Cermak one, the Morgan Street one down Lake Street.
Absolutely. And how badly did we need this McCormick Street or McCormick Place station? It's funny. I think historically there was once a train station there.
That's right.
But our methods of transportation changed. But connecting McCormick Place to people who live here and people who travel here has always been an issue, and I think this is another great step in the direction of solving that problem.
Now, Chicago architects, they work here, as we know, obviously, but they also work around the country and the globe. What are the more notable winners outside of Chicago that we might want to take a look at? If you had an airplane and could fly us any place.
All over the world. Our talent is spread far and wide, and projects by firms like Jahn, led by Helmut Jahn, were awarded at Design Night. A project in Munich, Germany, called Skyline Tower, part of an ensemble of buildings in Munich, was awarded. It's a really beautiful, sleek, high-rise tower surrounded by an ensemble of lower-rise buildings. And I often say of Helmut's work, which I think domestically in the United States is sometimes hard to understand, you look at some of the projects he's able to complete internationally, where construction budgets are probably more generous, and you see what that generosity can achieve. Some other projects, Perkins & Will, another very notable Chicago firm with offices all over the world, in fact, won several Design Excellence Awards last Friday, including one for a Washington, D.C. project for the United States Coast Guard headquarters. Not a huge tower. Of course, Washington, D.C., you don't see tall towers, but more of a sprawling complex of brick and stone built on an embankment, and it's sort of a cascading complex of quadrangles. It's a beautiful campus, a testament to what good design can achieve on a grand scale and still look really human and dignified, and actually quite natural. The way the project embraces its natural setting is really wonderful.
We're talking to Zurich Esposito, Executive Vice President of AIA Chicago, and we're discussing the winners of his organization's recent Design Night ceremony. Now, you've seen, obviously, the winners and the finalists. What themes can you pull out of all of this? What's making good design now, judging from these awards and what was submitted and what almost won?
That's a great question. What we did, and sometimes, you ask that question, the first thing I thought of, what didn't we see win? And what does that say? We did not see a lot of commercial interior spaces, office interiors, that sometimes sweep the awards program. And I don't know what that says exactly, other than perhaps the architecture community, represented by the juries we select, is tiring of repetition. We're looking for something more unique these days. When I look through the program, the magazine of all the winners this year, I don't see a lot of repetition. I see some very interesting ideas, some unusual ideas. For example, Jeannie Gang's project in Kalamazoo at Kalamazoo College for Arcus Center for Social Justice Leadership is an outstanding and unusual project. It incorporates a method of construction called cordwood masonry, whereby logs are used instead of bricks and bound together by mortar, with the log end facing out, with the exposed cut ends, and then connected by mortar. Yet it's executed on a very contemporary building. It sounds kind of folksy, the way I describe it, like a log cabin. Northeastern Illinois University, for example, here we have another great academic project, this time for a Chicago-based institute, the Northeastern Illinois University.
That's right. So this is the building, for those of you who live in Chicago, that when you're heading north outbound on the Kennedy, and you're looking to your right, or inbound, you're looking to your left, I suppose,
right.
You see this great ribbed structure.
Yellow.
Blue. It's right.
It's like, what is that?
What is that?
Peeking over the side of the expressway. And it's so captivating, and you think, what can that be? Because you can only imagine that does not look like a very desirable site. And it's amazing the amount of great design and problem solving that was fit into that project that was designed by JGMA, which is a Chicago-based firm led by Juan Moreno, really emerging powerhouse of a firm, I would say.
I would say so. I mean, he's done Uno schools, one Uno school in particular on the southwest side of Chicago that's just Just
the
stunning.
showstopper.
It really is.
JGMA won actually 2 other Design Excellence Awards. Something else that really makes me happy to see, not just, the SOMs, who also won awards, and Getch Partners, these super well-established firms, but to see firms like JGMA, another firm, Team A, unknown to me until these awards.
Unknown to me until right now.
They won for a really great and simple project that's for By the Hand Club for kids here in Chicago. It's an organization that provides education and other supportive services and activities for young people. And the project that they designed is just a really beautiful composition, not expensively built, but a lot of great design and thought went into it, and it was awarded. So it's great to see new voices represented among the winners, not just the Genslers. We love the Genslers. They're there. They won also for that fabulous Genevieve and Wayne Gratz Center in the Gold Coast, the addition to Fourth Presbyterian Church.
Oh, this is a really good one. It sits right on the side street there. I can't remember whether it's Pearson or what the side street is, but it's clad in
copper.
In copper, and the patina of the copper matches the copper. It references the sort of bits of copper that you can see in the old building on the flashing other places. Really,
exactly, that's absolutely right. And that patinated copper installed on this addition in a really contemporary way. And the geometry, it's a very geometric rectilinear building with wonderful sort of faceted insets. It all just works very well next to this gorgeous, historic Howard Van Doren Shaw landmark.
The discussion around design in the city seems to be really active now. A lot of activity and discussion about this around town. There's the architecture biennial that's happening from now until January. But there's other stuff too. And, we were talking about this before the mics came on, is that, you and I were around 15 years ago, a little more, when the talk was, has Chicago lost its groove? And I think I was even on a panel that was the actual name of it.
I think it was.
And it was me, maybe Herbert Mouchamp, the late Herbert Mouchamp from the New York Times, and Blair Kamen from the Tribune, and others.
That was a really popular program.
What's changed, or has something changed since then?
Well, I think it's not a bad idea to occasionally, if not constantly, ask yourself that question. But I also think that it's a more complex question than we realize. And I do think, as Chicagoans, we forget how fortunate we are that we're having these discussions. Mm-hmm. It is in our consciousness and part of our culture. And events like the Chicago Architecture Biennial reinforce that. And they kind of invite us all out to play, and we all have that conversation again. And that's what I love, that we're all talking about architecture, and it's top of mind. And I do think the biennial has done us a great service, making us think about our architecture again. We don't take it for granted here, and this has given us a great platform to play with. And the number of programs and panels, it's fantastic. What's equally important is that the development community and the client community will think about it as well. And they are just as important as players in developing what becomes our city.
So oftentimes the architect wants to do the right thing, has the ability to do the right thing, but because of compromises by a developer,
things change. Yeah.
I find that in many corners that the public discussion about architecture and design is really getting sophisticated out in the neighborhoods. I mean, you look at people talking about the propriety of the Obama Library possibly going in a park or another. And there's really sharp conversations from regular folks in the neighborhood who are able to talk about, density and propriety and does it meet the, it's really interesting what's happening now.
Yes. These conversations are not just taking place in architecture salons.
Exactly.
They're taking place in the alleys as we take our trash out. It's really a wonderful thing. It's a really great aspect of, I think, of living in Chicago, that this is such an ingrained part of who we feel we are, the environment that we live in. And I think we all know it's special. We love to complain about it and maybe that it's lost its edge. But that's part of the fun, I think, and it keeps us on our toes.
Well, in the time that we have left, let me ask you to look in your crystal ball a bit. We're going to look at 2016 and beyond, if you have that ability, depending on how sharp, how shiny your apparatus is. What do you see happening next year? What do you think we should be looking at for next year?
Certainly, we're all waiting to hear who will get the commission to design the Obama Presidential Library. Mm-hmm. And I'm making no guesses on that. I can't wait to learn more about that. And then other things I think that are on our minds are the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art on what is to some considered a controversial site along the lakefront. I personally think we could use a little more action right there.
I think so too. And for full disclosure, and I always say this when this comes up, no matter where I am, I was on the site selection committee picked by the mayor that picked the site. So just to get that out there so people know.
Who to blame.
Who to blame. That's right. Who to send the letters to. And it's funny, you mentioned the debate that's happening around architecture. When this thing was really hot, people would pull me aside and have these heated conversations with me, but good conversations about whether or not this belongs there or not. Right. And I liked it. I really liked it.
I tend to agree with you on this. And what I also find exciting is simply the design or the proposed design and how it will be developed and refined and most of all executed. And I do think that project represents a new form of architecture as we know it here in Chicago. And it will require new building techniques and possibly ways of using materials to achieve what it's setting out to achieve. And we talked about budgets a moment ago. I have a feeling that this project is okay on budget.
I think so.
The June-like form, the way the architects would like to execute it, could be very magnificent. I think would like to see a hotel realized at Navy Pier. I think that would add a great new dimension to the pier. And maybe something a little more progressive on the pier. I'd like to see that. I know they're looking at achieving just that. I hope the process moves forward next year.
Well, excellent. Well, we'll have you back next year to talk about that and other things, and certainly next year to talk about next year's winners at Design Night. Zurich, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Love talking to you all the time.
And I'm Lee Bay, and thank you for listening to Architecture 360. Check me out on Facebook at Lee Bay Chicago and follow me on Twitter under my name. Join me next time.